Good morning, Mr. Harris. This is your classmate, former classmate, Brandy Joyce, and I am responding to your discussion post from week 5. In this particular post, we were talking about the elderly and the church and kind of more of how we can better the two and make their connection a little bit better. Your post in particular kind of pulled me in from some of the things you said as far as not just tying in church and the elderly or older adults, but also tying in like mental health, because nowadays mental health is very big, not just for the elderly, but for practically everybody. But since we are talking about the elderly, I think that also plays a part, especially now with COVID and, them not being able to see their loved ones if they are in a nursing home, or the stressors of being, by themselves, uncertain, and whether they're at home, comfortability with their health being compromised by all this, and just as a whole, even pre-COVID, almost the same thing. But your post in particular did bring me to the point of where you mentioned how the church could be a place for connecting with social workers, if that's more of like an outreach thing churches can do, or possibly even having workshops that can help our elderly community. So one thing I did pull, or one reason that I liked your post, was it tied into a quote I found, or citation. This was written in 2018 from Miss Ann Nigel, or I never can pronounce his last name, but Ann Nigel. The article itself is titled African American Elders, Mental Health, and the Role of the Church, published by a publisher called Generations. I found this on page 62. But the post itself says church relationships are important stress coping resources and are linked to better mental health. So when you had mentioned where we could build a collaborative system, such as families, church, mental health professionals, that way it can all entangle really be beneficial to our elder community. That's literally what this says. Not just church relationships and not just African Americans, even though the citation came from the article. But just as a whole, I think of my grandma now. Like, my grandma raised me, in the church, basically. My grandfather too, until he passed when I was 5. But that's where it starts. They used to do their own ministries for marriages. They had a big, a commitment in their church. And I think their relationships that they've built, we still talk to those people to this day as family friends. But just as an elderly too, like even now, my grandma still keeps in contact with some of those, or has her own ministry too still. And she is about to be 75 next week. So I think it's really important that the church remains in close contact with their elderly community, because it gives them hope. And it does reduce the stresses that they may have already had, or that they, just found out about. So Mr. Harris, thank you so much for your post, and I appreciate it. Thank you.